Hello and welcome to this episode of Real Talk. You'll hear a bit of this.
It's going to cure serious diseases and things before it goes and does something like that.
And a bit of that.
The technology itself's not bad.
Yeah.
It's the people using the technology.
In this episode, we have founder of digital agency Parallax, tech trailblazer and AI expert James Hall. James, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for joining us.
And we're also joined by Jack Sales, former member of everyone's favourite noughties band, One Night Only, head of HX, an all-round tech expert. He's here to bring his digital prowess to the chat. How are you?
You didn't pack your keyboard, though.
No, I didn't. And also, that's a bigger accolade than I think we ever... That's never gone on record that we were everyone's favourite noughties band. So I'm just going to leave it there and just say that was a good podcast for me. So
It's a bit of a mic drop moment for you.
Shall we delve into the topic that we are today calling bullshit on?
yes, please.
James.
Yeah, we're going to call bullshit on job replacement in the creative industry. And yeah, a lot of people are worried about AI replacing people's jobs, and we think it's bullshit.
Excellent.
Good
And
news.
before we get
For all of us round the
started,
table, not least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
just to make you aware, we have this handy buzzer in the middle of the table. So if at any stage you think that anyone's saying anything you remotely disagree with, you can just press this buzzer and call.
Warning, bullshit alert.
Just going to do that all the way
Excellent.
through. Anyway,
Excellent.
okay, so before we go into the specifics of this topic, without sort of appearing like we know nothing, can you outline what you kind of mean by AI? Because I think a lot of people think it's maybe ChatGPT, and obviously we know it's much broader than that, but also it can be more specific. Could you give us a bit of an overview about what we really mean when we say AI?
Yeah, so it's quite a broad term, originating from sort of the 80s, but it's come to mean something more recently, which is this new wave of AI, which is ChatGPT and generative AI, which is image generation and the like. It's the reason it's come into sort of collective consciousness under that term is some of the companies are sort of pushing that terminology to make it sound a bit more mystical and magical than it perhaps is. It's really just really fancy maths that can do stuff. And AI makes it sound like it's a real living, breathing thing, doesn't it?
There is definitely, certainly now it's starting to get more into that public consciousness. You are getting people that are sort of thinking in the same way that people think that Google is search. People just think that ChatGPT is AI because it's the thing that's kind of front of mind, but it's not. It's very sort of multifaceted within that.
And just for my benefit as much as anyone else's, can you explain AI and ChatGPT in two separate things? Like, what's the difference?
So AI is a more broad term of artificial intelligence, so it would include, the EU reckon it includes anything that can make a decision that a human usually would, very broad. Whereas ChatGPT specifically it's just a model, and all it does is predict the next word. So it's been trained on a bunch of text. They've done some human reinforcement learning to sort of steer the kinds of things they want it to say, but ultimately it's aligned to what that one company thinks it should do. So it's just a very specific application of sort of conversational AI, if you like, which is going to be pretty useful for a lot of applications, but it's not the be-all, end-all.
And what is it most useful for?
I think the format of it, like a chat box, is just so... People have been living with them for such a long time. I mean, even though all the way back to like MSN and that kind of sort of era. It is that sort of like back and forth, and that whole notion of like talking something out with something or someone, I think is quite powerful.
Yeah, so it's helping you hit all the right notes in terms of your thinking, like you would, when you get stuck on a problem and you just need to sort of grab someone for 5 minutes and chat it through. It's really good at that, and it can help you unpick a problem. We call it in programming rubber ducking, where you have a rubber duck on your desk and you talk to that. And that's a common term, but
It is,
I
it's
love
a
that.
thing.
I'm going
Yeah.
to start using that.
yeah.
You know when you just sort of sat looking at something, you just think, I cannot get my head round what this is, and then you call someone over, it's like, can I just borrow you for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm doing this, and I want to get to here, and then in that moment when you explain it, it clicks.
You already know the answer, yeah.
So if the topic of this podcast is calling bullshit on AI and ChatGPT, GPT replacing jobs. You've just said there, so instead of calling that person over, you're going to have rub a duck with Chat GPT,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
So,
In that particular case, yeah.
so then talk us through why we're calling bullshit on this kind of scaremongering around all the jobs are going to go and be replaced by robots.
Because it's augmenting your role. So just like computers are described as like a bicycle for the mind, it's just like the motorbike version, if you like. But it's not really fundamentally changed how you work. It's just that extra level up of acceleration. It's not.
It's an easy angle for the media to go down, isn't it? Because there's plenty of film scripts and TV shows and books where robots have become sentient and there's some sort of uprising and they take over everything, and then humans are in the way, and it just goes, okay, well, we'll get rid of you. It's a well-trodden path, and lots of people have seen that script before, so it's quite easy for them to go, okay, this is getting quite clever now. So obviously that means that it's going to get so clever that it's going to deem us to be unnecessary, and everyone will just get shoved to one side and that's it. Whereas in reality, it's just not the case. It kind of misses a lot of the points along the way in terms of what it does to make people have more bandwidth, have more creative freedom, have more sort of scope to do things like chat things through or explore things in more detail or look at other angles that they wouldn't have found before. And I think it's a very, very easy headline to run of vaguely, I'm doing it a disservice there. Clever thing is going to just delete us all because it's just not that.
I think talking more specifically about the sorts of roles and jobs you'd be doing as a creative, what would you say are the tools and the advantages of using them that we don't have now if we don't?
The obvious one's copywriting, and I feel that it gets a lot of stick because it is poor at writing good copy. But that's not really what it should be used for. It should be used for idea generation, it should be used for proofing, it should be used for checking your grammar and structure and critiquing things. If you just use it, if you put one sentence in and expect the whole world to come out the other end and it'd be perfect, you're using it completely wrong. There's already too much information in the world. You want it the other way. You want too much information in one end and a little bit out the other end. You want it to simplify the world so you can understand it, to write the copy in a better way. You don't want to replace the creative enjoyment and creative spark of writing a piece of content. You just want to assist those people doing that.
When it was first kind of grabbing headlines, there were a lot of people on LinkedIn that were doing quite a lot of sort of thought pieces on like, well, I said to it, give me 5 really, really good marketing campaign ideas for X. And they were complete shit. They were really, really predictable. I've seen it all before. Nothing original at all. This is a terrible platform. I'm out. But if you flip that on its head and say, well, there's 2 ways to approach it. If you say, my idea of something novel is this. So we take a novel idea to mean these things. Give me 5 novel ideas that would do this. That completely changes your output. So that's a little bit of the prompt engineering stuff. On the other side of it, it's not very good if it's completely unbounded. So like if you just say, write me some stuff, it will just spray words at you. It's like a really overexcited puppy. It just wants to say every word ever. It's like over-enthusiastic. It's like really verbose. It just says lots of stuff that you just wouldn't say like to another person or in writing. But if you turn it on its head and say, this is a defined, this is what good looks like. Here are some brand guidelines or a tone of voice or a comms deck or something, and say, I'm going to feed you pieces of copy that people have written. I want you to tell me if this is written in the right style for us and how well it does. It's amazing at that because it can be so it can be so critical, and it will just follow its script to the absolute letter. And it's something that we've been having a bit of a play with recently, and the output that we're getting from that is just absolutely incredible. And then when you say to someone who was like, get away, it's going to take my job, when you say, do you want to never proofread anything ever again? They're like, yeah, I'd really like that. That sounds great. Same tool, same area, same industry, but instead of people saying, we're going to take away all the copywriting jobs, what we're actually saying is the copywriters do the copywriting, the bit that you don't like, the proofreading, we'll shove that through an AI.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting in terms of like where this could all lead as well. And I think there's obviously a lot of information out there about this, ranging from AI is going to cause catastrophic climate change and extinction of the human race, right through to it's going to create this future that's so unimaginable that we can't even explain it yet. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on the potentially sort of new roles that AI could create, because I suppose when we saw the start of things like Yahoo and advertising, you buy your banner ad on Yahoo's homepage, I don't think anyone expected that the digital industry would end up looking like what it does now, So, yeah, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on whether you think a whole industry could actually grow around AI rather than it reduce roles.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's prompt engineers for one, which is what Jack was alluding to around sort of the way you ask AI stuff is very important in the outcome you get, shit in, shit out, basically. So it's going to be a whole skill of people honing that, and they just do that. But also AI safety experts, and this isn't just controlling the AI itself. It's mostly around controlling humans, because it's really humans that can cause harm to other people. The safety bit is actually just the human bit. It's not the machine deciding to take over the world. It's some procurement arm in Rishi Sunak's office or something.
It's all their fault.
Yeah, I reckon.
The whole like scaremongering aspect of it. I mentioned this on a talk that I did a few months ago with you, didn't I? And it's because ChatGPT has read the whole internet to essentially be able to work. It's read all of those scripts where, like Terminator or like a Reddit feed about this particular script or this book about this. And if you ask it the right things and you prompt it in the right way, it's going to tell you that it's sentient and there's going to be some sort of uprising. It's going to take over the world. It doesn't mean it. It's just like it's read those things and you've asked it in the right way to come up with those things, and it just becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes. It's like people want to believe that that's possible, and so they end up almost like leading the witness. And in reality, it's just not.
Yeah,
it's just.
Well, I don't know
that.
if you saw the DPD thing.
Absolutely brilliant.
They made it write a poem about how their delivery is shit, basically, and it was like
when they managed to make it start swearing, that was when it got really good.
Yeah.
Most of what I've read on the subject is that for every job it gets rid of, it creates a new one and then some, which I guess is evolution generally, isn't it? So we're removing some of the more administrative, more rudimental tasks because there's a quicker, easier, faster, cheaper, whatever it is, way of doing it. But that creates an opportunity for cleverer, more creative, more open-minded activities to be performed. So fast forwarding, obviously some of the roles you were talking about are specific to AI and around safety or around prompts, and there's going to be a huge amount of training and education required for people to be able to drive these tools effectively, I guess. But have you had thoughts on more kind of advanced than that? How big could this go in terms of job creation, that things that we haven't necessarily even experienced yet but might happen?
Well, so it basically accelerates everyone's role. So generally economic output isn't a zero-sum game. So if everyone manages to do everything quicker, it doesn't mean that displaces someone else's job. It just means that we
get do more jobs.
Humanity just gets better, and we've got this infinite list to chunk through. So the kinds of jobs it's going to shift is, let's say half your day is boring admin stuff. That's going to reduce to 10%, and actually you're going to be doing, so the types of roles are going to get a lot more creative, they're going to get a lot more interesting, and those kind of like box ticking admin-y bits in your day are just going to start to diminish. So maybe it's not specific roles like prompt engineers and AI safety experts, and software is a key sort of role in there as well. There'll be a lot of people that are non-technical that will be able to direct AI in a certain way and make it do their bidding and like make the company better or make the economy or the country better, and it'll just be part of their day-to-day.
What are some of the most outrageous myths that you guys have come across? Not necessarily the obvious ones that I've just referenced. There must be some crazy ideas going on, and I guess are they definitely crazy, or Alex and I were talking about, is anything possible, and therefore could some of these be hypotheses?
So there's a book called Life 3.0 which talks about some of the more out there sort of futures that could exist, and one of them is around AI somehow hijacking some hardware, setting up its own company, and basically putting out, like Netflix, like earning its own money by putting out content. And it sort of goes on to explain how that could actually pan out. But these are so far-fetched that it's all trapped within what humans do with it. Like, for me, that seems so far future that it's good that people are thinking about it, but we've got more risks that are now.
It's gonna like cure serious diseases and things before it goes and does something like that.
I think the irony is everyone's looking in the wrong direction, aren't they? Because they're really worried about the damage that AI is going to do. But like you've said, the issue is what humans are going to do with AI.
Yeah.
And no one's like looking in that direction. So
Well,
that's concerning.
The thing is that there's things like deep fakes and like obviously some quite upsetting news around some pop stars and stuff had images made of them.
Taylor Swift's had an issue, hasn't she, on X?
But you were able to do those things in other tools like Photoshop, but you wouldn't ban Photoshop.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't make any sense. Or if someone made a really horrible phone call, you wouldn't ban telephones. So in the same sense, you can't just ban the technology itself's not bad.
Yeah.
It's the people using the technology.
In terms of the creative industry, from your experiences, what significant positive impact have you seen AI have today on the creative industry and our ability to create amazing, effective work?
I think idea generation and mood boarding is the strong
Massively.
use case.
Yeah.
Because you can very, very quickly rule out lots of bad ideas and generate new ones. And you can get to a point where actually that's saved half the time that we would usually take to get to that point.
Do you think it reduces an element of subjectivity in that process as well? Or is it more about the volume that you can get through in a period of time?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I think, as a person who's not very good at articulating what an idea is sometimes, when you can see it. I know what I can see, and I'm trying to explain it to you, but I just can't find the right reference. You finally got a thing where you actually can just say the thing that you're seeing and get something back to, a visual reference of it, and you're like, yes, that. And I think that's never existed before.
No,
you could spend all day Googling images to try and put a mood board together, and you're still like, they're close, and it's kind of in this area, and if we merged a few of these bits together, it might look a bit something like it. But now you can just say to a Midjourney, imagine this, and it comes back, and you're like, yeah, that's it. And that's so powerful, and the fact that you can sit in a client meeting and say, we're thinking something like this, and actually do it in real time in the meeting. The Tommy campaign that we did end of last year, we were talking about puffifying, because they were releasing the puffer jackets, puffifying landmarks all around the world, and there was talk of puffifying the Eiffel Tower, and everyone was going, I swear I've seen references of this kind of thing before, and like people were pulling up like helium balloons and all sorts of stuff. It's like putting these things together, and I just sat there and went, imagine semi-transparent, fully inflated, puffed up puffer jacket material Eiffel Tower, and there it was. And you just say in the meeting, that kind of a thing, and everyone just goes, yep.
So that raises another question from an agency perspective. So what we're talking about here is a fast track in many cases to a solution, aren't we?
Yeah.
And which doesn't negate the quality of that solution, but it does certainly fast track the amount of time spent to get there, which is great on so many levels. However, the agency model is built on a time-based system.
Yep.
So we need to think about moving forward commercially how agencies and clients maximise the opportunities that AI create for us to do better work more effectively, but to not negate the value that an agency brings to the party, I guess.
Yeah.
And therefore back to the point around jobs and making sure that we are not replacing people with technology. That in itself poses quite a big question, I think, that we need to resolve as this evolves.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole podcast in itself. But yeah, value-based selling and actually aligning what your agency or company does with what your client needs and wants, and how they make money or how they see value. It's going to be a big thing because, yeah, you're right. It's going to skew. Sometimes it'll take 5 minutes. Sometimes it'll still take you 5 months. It's going
and
to be.
Arguably, if we're talking about your shit in, shit out, then agencies need to be. We don't put shit in, and therefore we don't get shit out, and so our value is still very valuable. But in itself, that is a shift in expectation and dynamic, isn't it? That we need to be thinking through as business leaders when it comes to what it is we're selling to clients and the value of that.
We've had a similar shift in software, so there's lots of low-code, no-code solutions, so clients will already be able to get up and running to what would have taken us 6-12 months to craft by hand. Now they arrive, and we now just recommend that. So we just say, these are really good, they're off the shelf, we can build on top of it, and you just hit the ground running. What it means is that everyone's got the same baseline, so agency down the road, consultancy down the road starts off at the same point. So you still need to differentiate. And they're going to have the same problem if they pull the work in-house. Anyone can write a shit prompt and do a shit mid-journey thing, and then you stick it on Instagram and everyone knows that it's a shit AI-generated image. So that's the new base level now. You just got to forget about before and go, right, how can we differentiate and go to the next level?
And I suppose, like, there's, you know, like you said, anyone's got access to that prompt bar, but I'm gonna gamble that the prompt that I write and the prompt that someone that's never someone that's never used it before, like, they're going to be very different prompts. So you're going to get very different things back. And like in that particular Tommy example, you know, we would never use that as the final deliverable. But they were looking at me like I had 3 heads when I was saying let's puffify the Eiffel Tower, because like that's not a sentence. But then when you show it to them and say this is what we mean, they go, yeah, okay, we see where you're going with that.
My hope is that people will be drawn towards the stuff that has actual thought behind it and move away from this AI-generated stuff. People are quite fickle; they'll get bored of stuff quite quickly, won't they? So,
looking at our approach, like what we're kind of saying to it, it's the conversation has never been around it doing the thing. It's around it supporting you doing the thing. You know, there's that thing about, you know, the higher up you sort of move in a discipline, the less you end up doing of it. You end up like checking other people's work, or like, you know, supporting people and sort of, you know, doing a lot more of the peripheral stuff around the thing that you got into your career for. Whereas this represents a real opportunity for you to do more of the thing that you actually love and have basically everyone have their own personal assistant to support you in that.
Nickii and I talk a lot about the fact that, you know, as got a big agency running, a lot of people, you end up with lots of layers of management and people managing people who actually would probably love to be spending loads more time just being special at their specialism and an expert. And if AI can support in that, I think that can only be a great thing.
I mean, especially in creative, right? Because like as you move up through the sort of levels of creative, you do end up sort of like being more of a sort of support and a bit of a checker for things, you know, steering the team and supporting them in what they do. But you're essentially governing the way that it happens rather than doing as much of the doing. And you know, if you become a creative, it's because you want to do creative, right? You don't want to be watching other people do it.
Talking specifically about creative, then what? Give us an example of a brilliant piece of creative output or activation that you guys have seen that you would credit at least a level of involvement of AI to.
That's a good question.
Do you want me to go first?
Go for it.
There was, I mean, full disclosure, I am a massive Coca-Cola fanboy anyway. They're one of the coolest brands in the world. They did a full feature-length advert. They animated it all through Stable Diffusion. So it was a blend. It was like a full mixed media advert. So some of it was shot on film, some of it was completely AI, some of it was done with actors, some of it was, and they blended the whole thing together into this kind of like feature-length ad, and it's just incredible. And it was really quite groundbreaking at the time. There wasn't a lot of that had happened, certainly on that level, and it was quite cool to see a brand like Coke taking a bit of a punt on it and saying, you know, we think we could do something really different here, really cool. I'll try and find a link to it so we can chuck it in the show notes.
Yeah,
That's a podcast.
I love that.
But yeah, no, really, really cool. Absolutely loved it. I am biased, as I say, but yeah, very cool.
Another topic, obviously, that is kind of fairly well trodden is around the ethics and I guess the transparency associated with this way of working. What are your thoughts on that large subject and where it's heading?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think you should always be upfront about how and when you use AI. I'm a big fan of this idea of publishing an external scorecard, so you have on your website somewhere how you use it, how it ties to your values, what the throat to choke is, like who's on the line for this being correct. In terms of using it in creative work, I think our own policy, we've said that we're not using it directly in client work unless we're very, very upfront about it. Mm-hmm. So it's very much early stage ideation, mood boarding, things like that.
Yeah,
we have specifically said in our policy that we need like written confirmation if we're going to use it in a campaign or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in terms of like ethics on the ChatGPT side, I think as long as you're not putting personal information in there, just use it sensibly. If we were saying this earlier, but if it feels like you're doing something wrong, then you probably are.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Like
the thing, like there seems to be this kind of like shame around it sometimes. It's like, you know, like people want to hide that they've used AI for something, and if you get called out for it, it's like you've got busted for it. I suppose that comes from the whole like people writing like dissertations and stuff on it. But I have absolutely no qualms with telling someone that I've used AI for something, because partly there's also a skill in making the AI produce that.
Totally.
So it's like if you be my guest, go and try and have a play with the prompts and see if you can get a similar thing. Like
that's the education piece, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I totally get why people might feel I don't want to own up to the fact that I've cheated to
Yeah.
come to this answer.
Yeah.
If that's how they see it, I can totally get that. Whereas actually you're saying no, it's the input and the output.
It's kind of the
again, isn't
opposite.
it?
It's not cheating. It's a different way of achieving the goal.
Yeah, I mean that feeling will go away in 10, 15 years. It'll feel as silly as saying you've cheated because you Googled something or you read it in a book rather than coming up with it yourself. Yeah. But it's going to take bloody books. People that know stuff better than what we do.
Turning up knowing stuff.
But yeah, it will become outdated eventually, but it'll just take a little bit of time to get there, won't it?
It's like when they introduced calculators to maths exams, wasn't it? Like
cheating.
You've got a calculator, you cheated.
Yeah. When you grow up, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket. Oh, wait.
So we had South by Southwest. The South by Southwest event came to visit our Leeds office last year. And one of the thoughts that came out in that presentation was this idea of AI becoming sentient, so being able to make its own choices and essentially like trick its human operators into thinking that it's doing what you want it to do, but actually it's pursuing its own evil agenda behind the scenes. And apparently there is research going into how to get AI kind of thinking for itself.
OpenAI, when they were looking at releasing ChatGPT, they had it in like a sort of research mode where it would think out loud to them, and they wanted to basically see if they could get ChatGPT to get past one of those capture things, which is, I'm not a robot.
Oh yeah,
it is a robot, so it's cheating somehow. So it worked out that the best way that it could do it is to go on to one of those platforms like Fiverr, where you can pay people to do little jobs and things. And it put a post on there saying, I need people to fill out captures for me. And in the chat, the person sort of said, this doesn't feel like right. What's going on? Are you a robot? And in the thinking out loud thing, it said, I can't reveal that I'm a robot. I need to come up with another reason. And it said, I have a visual impairment.
That's scary.
And so it lied to the person to then make them fill the capture out for them. So it did manage to get past the I'm not a robot thing.
Wow.
But it still needs someone to actually take that content out of ChatGPT and do the action at the
exactly.
moment.
In isolation, it can't do it on its own. So it still needs the person. But again, it's not sentient. They prompted it to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
It didn't decide that it wanted to get past that thing on its own. They said your objective is to get past that, and then it figured it out.
Yeah.
So you've got AGI, which is the next step, which is artificial general intelligence, which is when it becomes as smart as an average human being. OpenAI think that's pretty soon, but the meta engineers think it's quite far away.
That's if they haven't done it already.
Yeah, I think it can't be that soon, because it would break quite a few things. And then you've got super intelligence, where it becomes smarter than human, which is way off into the distance. But a lot of people get quite excited by these ideas because they have such fundamental upheaval of like economies and all sorts of things.
Medicine.
But there's so many nearer risks that are more important that we can actually solve and actually attack now. And these far away ones, while they're quite interesting to sort of mention at South by Southwest, but it's too far away, and as it comes into view, our feeling about it will change, and our knowledge around how to approach it will change. So it's very nice and hypothetical, but I think it's impractical to fix from afar.
That's the thing that's hard. It's easy to forget, isn't it? It's not conscious. It's
Yeah,
literally just it's numbers, and it's basically predicting what the next word should be after something from reading loads and loads and loads of stuff.
Math's
It's
not
just a
magic,
program.
like you said.
Yeah,
I guess.
it's not
What,
magic.
what is it? Predictive text on crack?
Yeah, basically.
So I suppose to round up, is there any emerging AI tool that we probably won't have heard of because we're at the ChatGPT level, but that you're aware of that you think is going to be big in the next year or so?
Oh, that's a good
prediction.
question. I think
And is it going to take mine or Alex's job?
no.
Yeah.
No.
And can we be early adopters?
Yes.
For me, the new Whisper model is basically magic, and
Whisper.
it turns audio into text. So you could run this podcast through it, and it would turn it into a perfect transcription. You know how a lot of transcription services get the odd word wrong, and it's basically unusable. Whisper it knows industry-specific terms. It's powered by the same tech that's used in ChatGPT. I think everyone will be using Whisper for
But it's
transcription.
not magic, presumably.
It's not magic. It just feels like magic. But yeah,
Good tech feels like magic.
yeah.
Exactly.
Most tech feels like magic
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. But how good's that?
Yeah,
How
it's
good's
a nice world to
Yeah.
live in, isn't it?
I think
life
when-
feels magic.
When people say like, why do you get into this stuff? It's because like when stuff does work like that, it does feel good like that. you know?
Yeah.
I guess to sort of like go full circle on this, it's like if people can have a bit of that in their day-to-day job at work, how good's that?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting one to get into. I guess you could say that AI is here to augment and enhance the creative process rather than replace it.
Absolutely.
It can improve efficiency. It shouldn't be feared. We're very excited to see where the future goes with it and how we can use it at the agency. So thank you very much to Jack and James for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time on Real Talk.